Good day. I'm Chris Jansing, live at MSNBC headquarters in New York City, and we begin with breaking news. It's coming to us from Buckingham Palace. They've just announced that King Charles has been diagnosed with cancer and is postponing his public duties. The king had left hospital just a week ago after treatment for an enlarged prostate. Joining us now with more is NBC's Molly Hunter. Molly, I understand literally the palace has just released a statement. What are they saying?
Chris, that's right. We just got the statement, and I am just reading it for the first time as well. The big thing to understand, as you know, we covered the King's health scare last week, which was really presented as a routine procedure. He was only in the hospital for 3 nights. He was in the London clinic right here in central London. But right now we have this statement from Buckingham Palace, and I'm just going to read it for you, Chris. It says, during the King's recent hospital procedure for benign prostate enlargement, that was what we knew. We knew he had gone into the hospital for what he called and what the palace called a routine surgery, a routine procedure, a separate issue of concern was noted. Subsequent diagnostic tests have identified a form of cancer. This is coming directly from Buckingham Palace. His Majesty has today commenced a schedule of regular treatments, during which time he has been advised by doctors to postpone public-facing duties. Now, Chris, we expected he would postpone a couple of weeks of public-facing duties of royal engagements while he was recovering. He was taking a private, personal time for recuperation, the palace had said last week. Clearly, he's going to be taking more time out of the public eye. The statement continues to say throughout this period, His Majesty will continue to undertake state business and official paperwork as usual. The King is grateful to his medical team for their swift intervention, which was made possible thanks to his recent hospital procedure. He remains wholly positive about his treatment and looks forward to returning to full public duty as soon as possible. Chris, last sentence in this statement, His Majesty has chosen to share his diagnosis to prevent speculation and in the hope it may assist public understanding for all those around the world who are affected by cancer. So certainly a little bit of transparency from Buckingham Palace. They do not say what kind of cancer. They do seem to say, or at least suggest, that it is a separate issue of concern. We really don't want to speculate here, but a separate issue of concern from the enlarged prostate, which he was so kind of public and proactive about sharing. One of the big reasons we understand that King Charles wanted to share his initial hospital stay just last week was because he wanted people to get tested. He wanted people to really be aware of what was happening and be proactive about their own health, be diligent about their own health. This appears, though, to be something entirely different for the 75-year-old monarch. Chris?
Well, when they talk about the fact that he's chosen to share his diagnosis to prevent speculation, it is widely understood in the United States that speculation is part of the stock in trade, frankly, of the tabloids in the UK. Have they been, I'm not asking you to repeat any random speculation, but has there been a lot of speculation? Are folks looking, for example, for more details? And I say that from the American perspective, where a doctor might come out who was treating someone of that stature and explain exactly what was going on. I take it we don't expect anything to that extent there.
Absolutely not. And I think there is a different set of rules when it comes to the royal family here in the UK. As we know, of course, the Princess of Wales, Kate, spent almost 2 weeks in the hospital. Last week, she and King Charles were both discharged from the London clinic on the same day. And Kensington Palace, Chris, was very hush-hush, was very mum about her condition. We still do not know what put the Princess of Wales in the hospital for nearly 2 weeks with abdominal surgery. But he apparently really wanted to be kind of out in front about the enlarged prostate condition, about his routine surgery. He wanted to talk about it. He wanted people to know and not worry, because at the time, the palace said it was benign. Clearly, whatever has changed, and we do not know what type of cancer this is, he does not want to say, or Buckingham Palace is not saying tonight. We will not see, though, a doctor from the London clinic or a doctor that has treated the royal family in the past kind of come out and start talking about what risks the 75-year-old may face.
Yeah, 75 years old, but generally, and correct me, my memory may be off, but he's been in pretty incredible health. He's somebody who is well known, for example, for organic products, for spending a lot of time outdoors. He's considered, for a 75-year-old, had been in pretty great health.
Absolutely, he has. And certainly kind of we see the king and we see pictures of the king a lot, spending time outdoors. The royal family, we know, spends time out in the countryside, up in Scotland, of course. Outdoor activities are a serious part of King Charles's daily life. So whatever this is, though, it will be very interesting if Buckingham Palace and clearly if King Charles wants to share those details with the public and when they do. What we do know is that he's started treatment today. So that is clearly they felt comfortable sharing that. Where he is undergoing that treatment, we don't know. Of course, we know that the royal residences can be ramped up, can be equipped with medical staff. They were both the Princess of Wales and King Charles were in the London Clinic. It is one of the best surgical hospitals here in London, Chris. So we do not know if he's undergoing those treatments in a clinic, in a hospital, or somewhere more private, Chris.
Has there been any mention, and again, I was handed this statement, which is from the Royal Communications Office of Buckingham Palace, that there will be any updates, that there's anything else forthcoming, any briefing in person to members of the press?
One of the things both Buckingham Palace and Kensington Palace absolutely do not do, and I think clearly one of the reasons they're putting out quite a lengthy statement. This is a much longer statement, for example, than we got from Kensington Palace when Kate went into the hospital, much longer statement than we got for when King Charles went in and when he was just discharged just last week. One of the things they do not do is do rolling updates. They do not even if we are hounding their spokespeople with questions, they do not provide rolling kind of updates as we go. They provide information when there are big notable milestones that they feel like they can share publicly. And that is where the information comes. There will not be additional information, as we just discussed, Chris, from doctors, from other sources, from the hospital. We will learn anything additional about King Charles's health, about what kind of cancer this may be, about what kind of treatment he may be undergoing, I think, from any future statements from Buckingham Palace. No expectation that we're going to get any additional statements tonight, and certainly no expectation that we would be given any opportunity to kind of be at a press briefing or ask any questions like that.